Hello and welcome to this week's live event. And welcome if you're watching on YouTube. My name is Ailsa Kepi, and you can find out more about me on my website, www.pleasureforhealth.com. And today we're talking about the idea of how to be your own best friend. Really, this is the core of being a human being, a compassionate, kind human being, is really how do we, be our own best friend, and then how can we kind of ripple that outwards to our other relationships. So today I just wanted to really kind of dive into this topic in a little bit of a different way. You might find some of the ideas are a little bit kind of radical, not the typical ideas of, okay, love yourself and love everyone and, it'll all work out. We actually need to really look very carefully at what we're doing in our society when we say love yourself, whether we're just kind of creating more of the problem than actually, finding a sense of peace and joy and satisfaction in just being us, just being me. So, what I wanted to sort of say is that being our best friend requires that we actually get radically honest with ourselves. And by radically honest, I mean, don't let yourself tell the story that you've always told yourself, like, well, I always am really nice to people and they never are nice to me. Or I always go and help people and nobody ever helps me. Or, all of these stories that we tell ourselves about what happens to us. And we need to get really radically honest about what is our underlying intention that is driving our interactions, that is driving our experience. Because on some level, and I'm not saying that some of us aren't in really horrendous situations where we are feeling trapped, for sure. But underlying that is an intention that we need to get really clear about. There's a drive there. There's a motivation that we need to get really clear about. Good morning to those of you who are coming on. We need to get really clear about what these underlying motivations are, because if we don't, they are going to be running the show. Whatever intention or underlying motivation is really driving our behavior and our actions, that is what we're going to attract into ourselves. So if we're coming from that place of, I need somebody else to fulfill me, I need to have someone take care of me or rescue me, or I need to rescue them, or, all of these kind of pseudo relationship goals, I might call them. um, it's going to be really hard to kind of actually have a relationship. And so what I start with women that are in my Facebook group and in my programs and working with me individually and different types of coaching or in-person programs is we start with, what are your values? What are your beliefs? What calls to your heart? And, we have to start getting to know ourselves. I mean, how can you be your own best friend if you don't even know? So, a lot of this starts with slowing down, becoming aware of what are the thoughts that are going through our head. Often we are, you could almost say, narcissistic in our own thought patterns. We're thinking about ourselves a lot. So, we have underlying most of our day, we have things like, I'm afraid of this, or I don't like that, or why is this person doing this to me, or this isn't fair, or I'm so much better than those people. Why do they always have good things happen to them? And on and on and on and on. It's all about me, me, me. And yet, so, we're spending a lot of time thinking about ourselves, but it's not in a kind, friendly way. We're kind of victimizing ourselves, we're rescuing ourselves, we're pacifying ourselves, or, we're kind of supporting ourselves to continue doing some kind of dysfunctional pattern. Oh, I'll just do this, it won't really matter. Oh, I'll do that later. Procrastination, all of these things. And if I had to ask any one of you, and I absolutely know this because I've talked to many of you, if I had to ask you, what would a good friend do in this circumstance? A good, you guys, you tell me. A good friend is not going to just say, oh, it doesn't matter, don't worry, don't work on yourself, just go have a drink, go watch Netflix, you don't need to do anything. They're going to say, no, stand up for yourself, go do this, love yourself, whatever. And so, why are we not doing that for ourselves? And yet we're spending all this time thinking about ourselves. So, you know we have to ask that question. And it was a really interesting question to consider before doing this talk. So, one of the things I think that our culture has unfortunately cultivated, and I'm not sure this was an intention of, what we created, but perhaps it was, our culture has created this sense of kind of self-criticism, self-judgment. We're going to compare ourselves to others from a very young age. We're sent to school, or we're in, even in playgroup, and it's like, well, who's the best colorer, and who's the best singer, and who's the best dancer, and who's the best at this, and who's the best at that, what kind of, and so we're constantly compared to other people. So from a really young age, we have a sense that we have to somehow show up in a way that makes us the best at something. We also get asked multiple questions like, well, what's your favorite color? What's your favorite doll? What's your favorite game? What's your favorite show? All of these things that, and as a young kid, we're like, oh my God, I have to have a favorite. I have to somehow come up with this. And we have so much choice in our life, and we don't know. What, if you ask a kid, like, what's their favorite color? Like, I know for myself, it, like, depended on the day. I liked blue, I liked red, I liked pink, I liked purple. In fact, I liked all the colors, and I didn't know what was the right answer. Do you say you like the color that all your friends like? Do you say, well, I'm a girl, so I better like pink or purple? I'm a boy, so, do we genderize it? We had so many restrictions on what we were supposed to answer, that we learn at a very young age that there has to be a right answer, and if we don't give the right answer, then somehow we're not good enough. And so here we start seeing the not good enough program starting to kind of infiltrate our sense of self. And so, we have to like the right color, we have to dress in the right clothes, we have to, be smart but not too smart. We have to do we had to constantly compare ourselves. We want to be the best at something. We want to get an award at the end of the day for, what was our kid the best at? What were we best at? And really, if you were thinking about how to be a really good friend to someone, wouldn't you just say, you're just great, being who you are. I love you. Right? So, it really is kind of strange that in our culture we haven't cultivated this kind of, you're just great, you showed up today, it's so nice to see you, I love that you're wearing all the colors today, and that's amazing. And oh, you liked yellow yesterday and you love purple today, that's awesome, it's so great to see you. Right? We have all these like judgments that we make about each other, and therefore we kind of start turning this into our how we think about ourselves. Am I doing it right? Am I pleasing this person or that person? So this kind of almost like too much choice, like we're creating a sense of self-doubt, like, ooh, did I do the right thing? Did I pick the right thing? And we get this kind of confusion, and we have self-esteem issues. And it was interesting because I was listening to a talk by a Buddhist lady, and she was talking about the Dalai Lama being quite confused about coming to the West and finding that we had this big self-esteem issue, like how many people have low self-esteem, and everybody's like, me, and the Dalai Lama's like, what? Like, why are you all having self-esteem issues? And part of it is possibly this this kind of idea that we're comparing ourselves constantly to other people. And so, we're doing what we think other people think we should do or like or be. And so we very quickly lose our sense of embodiment, what I like to call embodiment, and the way that we sense what is right for us is through our body, through our felt sense. And so all of my work is based on this somatic understanding, this embodiment, this integration of not only our thoughts, but our feelings and our felt sense in our body. And this is important in healing from any kind of trauma or any kind of abuse, because we have an exaggerated sense of often these kind of thought loops that are created with trauma and created from, am I good enough? I must not be good enough. This must be why someone's doing this to me. Oh, I just, somehow this just keeps going on and on and on. Do I deserve this? Or, why am I getting this? Oh, it must be something to do with me. And we have these thought loops that go round and around. And our thoughts really are not the ideal way to get a sense of self. And so I like to go to the body, because as we begin to learn what our body is actually feeling good and comfortable with, we have a sense of what pleasure is for ourselves, what joy is, what it feels like. What does compassion feel like? What does joy or pleasure or peace feel like in our body? Because really, at the end of the day, that's, I think, what most of us want. We can have all the right thoughts, but whether this really comes into our body. So our thoughts can lead us down the garden path very quickly into this kind of self-judgment, critical thing. And we've talked about the inner critic before. And so we want to be careful that we're not just getting caught in our thoughts, that we actually are bringing it down into a felt sense. So this is part of, slowing down and actually watching our thoughts, but realizing that we are something more than our thoughts. We have a body, we have a soul, we have a spirit. All of these things make up who we are, and they have nothing whatsoever to do with all those thoughts of, am I good enough kind of thing. So, looking also, the self-help field has actually created another way of saying we're not doing well enough at our self-help, or we're not doing good enough at being at loving ourselves either. And so we kind of we look at, how do I make myself happy? Well, I should do yoga, and I should do meditation, and I should do this, and I have to try so hard to be happy with what I'm doing that I end up not being happy because I'm trying so hard. And so we just get exhausted. And a lot of the time, we buy a self-help book on all these things we should be doing to build up our self-esteem and our self-love. And then we're so exhausted from doing all of that we have to go and buy another self-help book on how to deal with exhaustion and fatigue, which is huge, endemic in our society as well. And so, we're just perpetuating the whole issue. So we're still not finding a way to just love ourselves and be satisfied in the present moment right now. And so, this is kind of the crux of being a best friend, because a best friend just sits with you and holds your hand, right? A best friend just, comes over when you're feeling down and, has a drink with you and sits and watches the sunset. Best friend is just there. So how can we do that again for ourselves? So, I think that as well, in this kind of negative attraction, negative kind of self-talk that we get stuck in, we're sort of attracted to other people that have a negative self-image quite often. And so this attraction or obsession with someone else that has a similar feeling of self as we have. So we're actually, if we're in an abusive relationship and we see that other person, whether they're in their grandiosity or in their victimhood, not thinking well about themselves, really, how is that reflective of something that's happening within ourselves? And so when we look at, in my programs, we start looking at what is our relationship with ourself. It's indicative to look out and see what your relationships are reflecting back to you. And again, I'm not saying that if you're in a horrible relationship, that you're a horrible person. Sometimes it's just we don't think well of ourselves, so we're attracted, or we end up attracting to us other people that have similar frequencies or similar ways of looking at themselves. And so, um, we then maybe they make the whole situation worse, because then they're blaming us and they're telling us we suck as well. But really, they're telling themselves that as well. So it's kind of this ripple effect of negative self-image and negative self-esteem that is spreading. So really, the best way to start being our own best friend and to have a positive effect in the world is really to turn inwards, look at what we really think of ourselves, get really radically honest about what our motivations are. And if we are noticing that we are trying to rescue someone else all the time, oh, here's a poor person, I want to be kind to them and rescue them. This is where sometimes you need the support of someone from the outside who can just look and say, that rescuer part of yourself is not actually doing what you were thinking it's doing. It's not actually being kind or helping the other person. You're trying to feed your own lack by, rescuing someone else. And it can make you feel good in the moment, if you will. It can give you a sense of purpose. I'm helping someone. And you can fool yourself into thinking you're being a compassionate, kind person. I'm helping someone. I'm always doing stuff for them. I do whatever everyone else wants to do. And it's not really what compassion is. So, compassion is an interesting word. We all want to be compassionate people, or, I think most of us do. It's not actually feeling sorry for someone and going and trying to do it for them or help them. It's not doing what everyone else wants. That's not always compassionate either. And it's especially not what someone termed, I thought it was quite amusing, idiot compassion. You're not just automatically like being kind to anybody, any poor soul who comes along. It's about having a sense of self and going, is this really a kind thing to do in the moment? And is it safe? And is it good for, my bigger intention? And what is my bigger intention? Am I just trying to focus on someone else so I don't have to be kind to myself, because now I'm doing what everyone else wants? I'm being kind to all of them out there. I don't need to look at what I'm doing to my own self. And maybe I'm being actually unkind to myself, because perhaps I really needed to, sit and have a good, healthy meal for myself. And maybe I'm then going and running around doing it for everyone else and actually not helping them or me, because, we end up, rescuing is not helping. As many of us know that have been codependents or looked into codependent relationships, we actually end up enabling the same situation to go on. So, we really have to look within ourselves for this kind of compassion and kindness. And again, it's not about being selfish, because if we're looking at ourselves and we're wisely selfish, we will actually end up helping other people. And, there's nothing wrong with helping people. We just need to be really honest about what is the motivation of that. Is it really a fear of being alone that we run into another relationship? Is it really a need to be needed that we run to help other people instead of really taking some time to be with ourselves? Is it really something else besides what we're telling ourselves it is? And that's where, in my free webinar, where I go through the steps of overcoming this lack of self-confidence and, really finding intimacy, healthy intimacy, we actually have to, deconstruct that idea and come to, okay, I need to actually know myself. I might need somebody there with me that can give me a good reflection, that can actually point out, like, are you really being a good friend right now to yourself? Are you being honest with yourself? A good friend will tell you, that doesn't sound quite right. A good friend will, capital F friend, we call it, will actually call you on your bullshit. No, you're not actually doing that because you want to help that person. You're doing that because you need to go do something. You need to think you're being needed, or think, try to get someone to love you. So you're running around after them, doing all this stuff. A good friend will say, hey, wait a minute, let's look at that. So, how do we do that for ourselves? And one of the ways is to actually find someone that can see those types of patterns and get them on our team. Get them on our team. Like, get them to help say, hey, I'm really ready to have you, help reflect what I'm actually doing. Is this something that is really helpful or not? How can I feel into what real kindness and compassion feels like in my body? Because I guarantee, I've worked with many women, and I'll give you this little tidbit. I absolutely guarantee that feeling of helping someone when you're not really helping, like rescuing them, feels different in the body. It feels like an obsession, an addiction, a need. I have to. Whereas being really kind and helping someone feels freeing. It feels like I'm opening up and it just kind of pours out. And it feels very different, very different. And so these types of distinctions of the feelings are things we need to work together to get you to that place where you can sense that. You're like, oh, I'm slipping into my rescuer part of myself here, or I'm slipping into the victim that feels like I'm caged in and nothing's working. No, I want to feel the expansion. I want to feel the joy. I want to feel gratitude and satisfaction in my life. What does that feel like? I want to feel like I'm like this with myself, Pinky's best friends with yourself. And so that's kind of that slowing down, watching your thoughts, watching your feelings, and then really noticing what that actually brings into your body, So these are the types of ways that you can actually, teach yourself, reteach yourself, because a lot of us didn't get this type of learning when we were young. A lot of us grew up in that, that you should be the best at this, or you should, you should know all these things about yourself and work harder and be better and be perfect. So a lot of us grew up with those types of stories. So, we have to unlearn and relearn, and, we can't expect ourselves to do that without some help. Here's another way to be your best friend. Book a call with me. Let's talk about it. Let's get on the same page. Let's get some support. Have some support for yourself. You don't need to do it all alone. That can be just another story. I have to do everything, shoulder everything by myself, and not ask anyone for help. And is that really being your own best friend? Would a best friend tell you, oh yeah, go deal with that on your own? No, you're not strong enough, or, you don't need anyone. No, a best friend's going to be there with you, right? So think about these things, and actually start imagining what it would be like, what your best friend would tell, what you would want your best friend to tell you, and think about whether we're actually doing that for ourselves. Whether the thoughts that are constantly in our head are actually being helpful. And if they're not, how can we kind of watch our thoughts, slow down, and realize that our thoughts are not who we are? We are much more than just what's going swirling around in our head. And, so these are some things to ponder. And again, like I said, having some people on your team, whether you reach out to me and book a call, whether you reach out to, if you have a therapist or a support group, or really you find some really good friends, you reach out and you learn how to befriend yourself. It's really important in this work. So many things can get in the way. I absolutely recommend, if you feel drawn, I do offer a few hours a week to talk free breakthrough calls with anybody who feels like they're ready to kind of do this work. And you can book that by going to www.ailsakepi.com/apply. I'll put the link in the comments. So it's ailsakeppie.com/apply. You'll go straight and book a call with me, and we will talk about your particular situation. What are those habitual loops that are trapping you in an old way of being that is not supporting your current desire to really, the biggest desire and intention I have from the women that I work with and the people that I work with in general is to feel more peace and more joy and just, have compassion and love in the world, kindness. And so, how do we really to bring that out? How do we feel that in our own body? How can we be our best friend? And then, how can that ripple out into our relationships? I absolutely guarantee that when you change the way you are with yourself, you're going to notice your relationships with other people change. Some people may disappear from your life quite often. Some people will go. Other people will come in, and you will attract those people that are resonating with your new energy. And I can attest to that. I have a wonderful new partner now. I have lots of wonderful friends. Beginning to have all of you out there, and beginning to create a sense of a different world where kindness and compassion actually do come into it, and we actually come from a place of friendship with ourselves. So hopefully that gives you some things to think about. Thank you so much for joining me today. And if you're in my Facebook group, please do comment and let me know if there's other topics you want me to cover. And if you're watching on YouTube, thanks for joining me, and check out my other videos. All right, take care, everyone.